Hey, you guys, it's your boy Eli here, and I'm happy to announce that we will be part of Comic Palooza's podcast partnership program. And we will be there live in front of all of you guys, everyone who's be attending Comic Palooza on May 26th and 28th. We will be doing a live podcast episode in front of everyone and hope to see you all there. Uh, we will be doing some cool stuff there, and I hope to see you guys there. Hopefully, a meet up. Who knows? Anyways, guys, hope to see you guys there. Anyways, peace. And welcome back to another episode of Geek Centurions, guys. It's me, your boy Eli,
It's me, Joe.
and we're here to talk about the season finale of Mandalorian, season 3, and yeah, that was interesting.
Yeah, it was.
Not in a bad way.
No, I think it's been kind of interesting seeing not the discourse, but more sort of like just how people have been sort of taking to this third season of Mandalorian, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's like it. Part of it, I feel like, is very overreact. People are kind of overreacting to it. Like it's like, oh my god, that's
No, I definitely agree because I feel like there's like I don't know. It's kind of weird that some people kind of like are seeing this as like a bad season when I feel like for the most part this season overall was kind of all right.
mm,
Like okay, it's like it wasn't like super bad, but it's not like it was like the most amazing thing ever. It was solid all around. Like
yeah. It's not season 1. I think it's about as par as season 2, but it's not season 1.
yeah, I think that would be
Mm-hmm. Because season 1 was kind of like, whoa, you this is different. Which I think is something that I feel like a lot of the Disney Plus shows involving Star Wars have been kind of trying to do, where it's like it's Star Wars, but it's a little different.
I guess, but I think what made people really like that first season of Mandalorian is that yeah, it is sort of not that connected to the greater Star Wars
Mm-hmm.
mythos, right? There's no Jedi's. There's no. It's just a
Well, technically there are, but I get what you're saying.
yeah, like that first season, like doesn't really have that much into like I guess more like the Skywalker stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not stuff you would typically see in Star Wars. It's sort of a straight up Western,
Mm-hmm.
more or less, with a bounty hunter and all that stuff.
A lot of references to like Western movies,
Mm-hmm.
Westerns, cinema basically, and like even Japanese film, because like there was, well, I think it was episode 3 or 4 that was basically
Seven Samurai, yeah.
yeah, it was heavily Seven Samurai with the villagers helping out in the attack, and like that's what made it unique, even in like season 2 where there was like the Ahsoka episode. That was some straight up samurai movie.
Yeah, but I think some people, I think problem with like season two was like it was a bit too fan servicey, right?
Yeah, I can kind of agree with that. Well, not in like in a bad friend service way. It's more of like it's just okay. We're starting to connect stuff that I'm like, do we really need to connect all this stuff?
Yeah, it kind of went like Mando's sort of adventures were sort of just like, hey, let's have him meet a random Star Wars character that we know, kind of
Yeah,
thing, right?
Ahsoka,
Bo Katan,
Bo-Katan, Boba
like Boba
Fett.
Fett.
It's just
Later
like
on, like
yeah, Luke Skywalker.
yeah,
And so like the charm of it, I think now we're saying this is an overall thing, right? The kind of charm that Mandalorian had in the first season is kind of like starting to weigh off, where it was kind of like this cool lone wolf and cub kind of thing, straight samurai inspired kind of stuff, kind of like how the original Star Wars was inspired by the Hidden Fortress, the Akira Kurosawa film. So it kind of like comes in for a circle, but it's kind of like I guess ironically it became more Star Wars.
yeah. I guess like it became more like marketable, right?
Yeah.
I think that's sort of what we're talking about because, I mean, just to get into sort of the big thing with season three is that Mando and Grogu are back together, which is something that happens in, I think, Boba Fett, like the Book of Boba, right? So it feels like I think that's, for me, that's sort of like the one thing that like I am kind of like disappointed in. Like they don't keep that momentum from like the second season ending, where it's like he gives up Grogu to Luke Skywalker to let him get trained to be a Jedi and stuff. You know, like that's what he wants. That's what he's supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
But then, like, granted, I haven't seen the Book of Boba because I didn't feel like watching it, especially because, like, just to like, I didn't want to watch another show just to get into this show. I really feel like that's not like, like there shouldn't be like some other show I have to watch to get into the third season of this show. It doesn't really,
and there's clearly like stuff that happens in Book of Boba that like really like derails for like this storyline and the storyline of like Grogu trying to be like, I don't want to be part of the Jedi Order because screw the Jedis. I'm gonna go be a Mandalorian with my space dad.
Well, I mean, he doesn't say it.
He doesn't say it, but it's implied.
Yeah,
because he can't give up that attachment.
Yeah,
and so like that's kind of where, if you haven't watched Book of Boba, you wouldn't know that. But if you have, and it still feels kind of awkward that we get that story beat in a thing that doesn't involve, the Mandalorian story. Like, it's connected, but it's like, it still feels kind of weird. Even like, because Book of Boba was not a terrible show. I think it was pretty alright. It just didn't have a real, like, direction.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, everyone was talking about how, like, oh yeah, the best episode is the one without Boba, and I'm like, that's kind of questionable on the.
That's kind of a bad sign if your best episode is the episode that doesn't have your main character in it, right?
Mm-hmm. And like, they explain, the situation with Jin, that he's kind of outed as like no longer part of the group because he showed his face, and like. He has to do this, and that. But before he does that, he's got to do another fetch quest.
Yeah.
Which is helping out Boba.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of, it's really, I think that's the thing about the season. Like, it feels like kind of weirdly out of pace. And it kind of, that weirdly out of paceness kind of goes on with like the rest of the season. Because it's, like, not to go too much into spoiler, but like, oftentimes, whenever the Mando has to go and do like a mission, I guess it's gonna be derailed by something else, and it's like, oh no, you can just do that. Forget that plan A. You can just do plan B, or this happened to be plan B. I guess I would say.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of like a, hey, let's just do plan B, which is way less complicated, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of thing. Yeah. But yeah, I think I do kind of agree that the pacing's kind of weird. Because it does, like, like the main beat, at least in the first like couple episodes, is Mando trying to get, essentially be integrated into the group, right? He'd no longer be an apostate. Becoming a Mandalorian again by, going to Mandalore, bathing in the waters, all that stuff. And after that, like, sort of the plot kind of just turns into, like, oh, let's just retake Mandalore then, because, hey, since Mando was able to get there, the air's breathable, maybe,
maybe we can reclaim Mandalore.
Yeah, like, rebuild Mandalore, all that stuff,
Mm-hmm. And essentially, that's essentially what the plot becomes, but it's also, like, and this is what I'm saying, like, it's not a bad season. Like story beats make sense. Like, where one leads to another makes sense, but it's also kind of like, it feels too quick. I think this is the shorter of the seasons.
No, I looked it up. They're all the same episodes.
All the same episodes? Okay, yeah. I felt this was shorter. I don't know. I don't know what is it about, but this one felt a lot shorter.
Honestly, I can kind of understand what you mean by that.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because I did look into it. I think after I finished watching the season, it's like, all right, so how many seasons was each? How many episodes was each season? And it's like, oh, they're all 8 episodes each.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of interesting. And I think it is, to your credit, the pacing. You know, like I think the pacing is a little off at times because there are like some random like side quests they kind of have to do. Like I think when Mando and Bo-Katan have to go, pretty much have to go and
Fix a city problem.
well, I mean they had to fix some sort of cities like the city's problems with their droids in
Yeah.
order to like talk to because they've hired out the Mandalorian fleet that Bo-Katan was rolling with before they were like, you don't have the Dark Saber anymore. Why should we follow you, right?
Yeah.
So like they essentially like that's like they get sidetracked for like that whole episode before like the last 5 minutes is just like, you know, getting to meet them, selling the thing, blah blah blah, done, right?
Yeah. We had to have spend an awkward moment with Jack Black and Lizzo. I'm just like, what is going on? Like, it's not even a terrible episode, really. It's just like really weird.
If anything, I'm just like kind of surprised out of all those guest characters in that episode. I'm surprised no one talks about Christopher Lloyd's character in that.
He has such an interesting story too. It's like, yeah, it's like, oh, you're a separatist. It's like, I mean, kinda.
Yeah, I don't know. I find it funny.
Yeah, I like that Christopher Lloyd is finally he's in a Star Wars project and a Star Trek project.
Yeah, you know.
Jack Black is he's cool, but it's like, Jack Black, what are you doing here? What are you doing here?
Well, I mean,
I love you, but what are you doing here?
they're very eccentric in their roles, which is fine because like the whole like city is very like no one works because all the droids do all the work, so they get to like hang out and party and stuff like that. So it's like, okay, I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense it makes sense. But I'm just like thinking like, Jack Black, what are you doing here? Listen, what are you doing here? It just feels so out of place for me. Not to say they're that terrible. I think they do a serviceable job. But it's just really weird for me to see. Like I don't, like I said, I don't hate the episode. I know a lot of people had issues with it, but I'm just like, it's fine. Not that terrible.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you see Ed Sheeran in a Game of Thrones episode, right? Where you're like,
it's like, Ed Sheeran, what are you doing here? What are you doing here?
Yeah, like I can't think of any other like moment of in Star Wars where like there's a famous actor or whatever who shows up for a bit.
I think there was one for Boba Fett, but I just can't remember what it was. Because I didn't really care.
And it's funny too because you could argue maybe Rosario Dawson as Ahsoka, but then again it's like, well, she's in the makeup and she does very well of like playing the Ahsoka character to the point where it's like, it feels like they're not playing themselves right. I guess that's probably the
yeah, because the thing with Ed Sheeran was like he was just like pan to him singing.
And I think that's sort of the deal with, at least with Jack Black and the other Lizzo. Like they feel more like just playing themselves, but in Star Wars.
Yeah,
I think that's sort of the
reason,
like maybe the underlying issue here. But at the end of the day, it's like they're only there for like an episode, and you're probably never gonna see them again. So who cares?
Yeah, because I remember I haven't watched the episode by the time like all the discourse came out for that one. I remember it was like, wait, so are they supposed to be like Mandalorians or something? And it's because by that point I was like, okay, they're trying to get like the whole crew together. I was like, wait, are they Mandalorians or something? Like, is this like one of the royal families that escaped or something? And I was like, oh no, they're just like some rich pompous dudes.
Yeah,
just trying to have fun. And I'm like, that's fine. I thought it was gonna be a lot weirder and a lot worse. Mm-hmm. I was like, oh my god, are they gonna show up in a final fight or something? Like, oh no, they got it. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. I think Jack Black would have been an awesome Mandalorian.
I don't know, maybe
he would use the power of music.
Sure. I guess.
Give him the pick of destiny, buddy. The lightsaber of destiny. There you go. No, but you. And going back to Mandalorian, the show itself, there's some really interesting episodes too, and like I said, it flows well together, and there's a lot of like build up and a lot of stuff that like leads into the next that makes like I said, plot beats make sense. We get the return of that one doctor, the scientist dude.
The guy behind the whole cloning process thing. Yeah, that whole like episode is definitely super interesting. You get to see a little bit of kind of like it's almost it's a bit of a parallel to what happened like during like after World War II, where you had Nazi scientists.
Mm-hmm.
But they would essentially, I think it was like Project Paperclip is what it was called.
Yeah.
Where the U.S. would recruit them to have them work on stuff because it's like, hey, they're too smart to not use them, but at the same time they were Nazi scientists. And in this case, it's more
combined war crimes.
Yeah, but in this case, it's like it's kind of more, since it's Star Wars, a bit more black and white. It's like, okay, these guys are being rehabilitated to be good guys now, right? And that's in this doctor himself is like, yeah, I really was more like, I didn't like use my weapon workers being used, like my cloning technology was being used in like these bad ways. Yeah. So I want to hopefully like reform it, maybe use it to help say, with the, help the New Republic out. Cause his original thing was like, I wanted to do cloning stuff because my mom died. But if she had, if we were able to like clone like a new heart for her, maybe she would have lived and stuff, which is neat. And
it's it kind of goes back to one of the things like that I really liked about, Andor. It's like, hey, just because it's the future or whatever, it's different space and there's time, space travel, doesn't mean you're not still affected by real world shit, right? Because his mom died of like heart conditions, and you think like, oh, this is a futuristic city. I don't think they would have like. I mean, you could say that about a lot of stuff, but like it's one of those like it's like a real thing, right? It's like you would hear like, not to be like morbid or anything, you would hear people like who would beat cancer and it still hits back, kind of stuff,
Yeah.
It's one of those kind of situations. It's like, oh man, that's right. This is still a real world with like real stuff happening to people that are just like regular people shit. Because that makes the world more interesting. And like, yeah, he's not. I never thought he was like an evil character. Like, to be honest, when he first started, like, he seemed like he just like was always a scared dude.
Yeah, he was like, because in I think earlier season he's more into like his own research, kind of thing, and he's kind of more or less just reluctantly helping these Empire remnants because it's like, yeah, we'll kill you if you don't help us, kind of thing. It's like, yeah, okay, all right, I guess I'll
commit a couple war crimes to live.
I'll try to take blood out of a Force baby, Yeah, I'll do that.
What's even more interesting is like there's a moment where you're like, oh, he might have like found like a girlfriend.
I really didn't see it like that. I'm gonna be honest.
You really the cute, despite the cute little date.
I don't know. It's just more like, I don't know. I guess I didn't really see like relation stuff. I don't know. Maybe that's just me sometimes. I guess because I don't like think about that sort of stuff. Mm-hmm. Like I guess I don't have the shipper brain kind of thing.
Okay, gotcha.
So it was more like, yeah, this chick is helping him out, at least in terms of like getting him out of his shell kind of thing, and like sort of telling him, hey, yeah, we can help the New Republic out. Let's reform ourselves, all that shit, Obviously, there's a pretty cool plot twist by the end of it, though.
Yeah, like we're not gonna get that deep into it, but like essentially, I mean, the episode's been out, so we gotta say that. But overall, it's like, it's an interesting sort of twist where it's like, just because things are changing doesn't mean people are all going to be accepting of that change.
As well as like, and there's also like nefarious secret stuff going on, like,
and we don't even know what happens to them at the end.
Yeah, like it's kind of implied something like bad happens to him, but you don't really know how bad, right?
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, but yeah, no, it's a very interesting way that we leave that storyline, but like it ties back into essentially what would be the ending of the the season. When tying it all together, like who the big bad is and like why, this happens. Which I mean, it makes sense, but I also feel like it's kind of rushed,
A little bit because the ending, the end of the season definitely feels a little finite. Like
yes,
like
yes. Everything ends in like a very like storybook ending way. Like you don't like you're fine if like there's no season 4.
yeah, which is a interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because we get to learn the big bad's sort of
Big nefarious plot.
race plan, and it's like, okay, that's interesting, I guess. And it also kind of like gives the implications of like, I guess it's more like it sets up like a more reasonable explanation as to the events of, say, I don't know, a specific movie during a specific trilogy of Star Wars movies that came out a couple years ago that a lot of people were just like, what the fuck, you know?
Very divisive.
Yeah.
Somehow came back.
Yeah, like a major character just somehow comes back and we kind of like get more or less set up of like the explanation of like, oh, okay. To be fair, though, I feel like this whole series itself was kind of having that stuff in the background of like potentially maybe like trying to retcon like decent ways of like making it so like, okay, we can maybe make this like make a little bit more sense in retrospect, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like that thing in the Bad Batch, like the first season, where they take that one Kaminoan scientist who was part of the cloning stuff.
Oh yeah, that part where so essentially like it just ties into what eventually would happen later on.
Yeah, like it seems like okay, so we're writing it in that the Empire had a lot of interest in the cloning technology, but not in making more clone troopers, but in using it in various other ways.
Mm-hmm.
Potentially, maybe using it as a backup for something, maybe.
Well, I mean, even then, like, it's one of the things that surprisingly they tie up really nicely. Remember that in what episode was it? It was season 2. It was when they do the sneak in with Bill Burr's character.
Oh yeah, they break into that facility, right?
And they mention an event that happens in one of the Star Wars Battlefront games.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like it's one of those things where like, oh, so you which makes sense, right? Because like there's no way it's like once you defeated the big bad, there wouldn't be what do you call it
like a power vacuum.
Not just the power vacuum, but like plans to if should ever this happens.
Yeah, like a backup plan.
Yeah. Like there wouldn't be like set things that like okay if anything happens to me, do X, Y, and Z kind of shit. Which I mean like that makes sense. Palpatine was that kind of guy. I can see it, especially if like just because the war is over doesn't mean everything is tidied up well. And there's even hints of that in some of these episodes.
I mean. Yeah, this whole season itself is like, yeah, the New Republic is around, but it's, it's kind of hard for it to, like, make sure everything's running smoothly and, they're having hard times trying to get rid of whatever remnants are, whatever Empire remnants there's still out there,
there's a lot.
Yeah,
And speaking of which, going back to, like, how the new Empire, is settling. We also got to talk about how like the Mandalorians are settling because there's the whole plot of the Dark Saber.
Yeah.
So essentially, yeah, okay. So who technically owns the Dark Saber? Don't worry about that. That's all solved. That is solved real quickly and kind of not forgettably, but it's like, oh yeah, that did happen.
Yeah, it's kind of put in the back burner, like, because obviously, like. Mando has the Dark Saber, but clearly Bo-Katan needs the Dark Saber in order to reunite all the people of Mandalore under one like ruler or whatever. But it's like you can't just give someone the Dark Saber or give it up because that's not how it works.
That's not how their culture works.
Yeah, you have to win it in a battle, and obviously, even if Bo-Katan challenges Mando to a fight, he could easily just throw the fight to give her the Dark Saber because he doesn't want it. But I'm pretty sure that would be like, nah, that's bullshit. He was throwing. Yeah, you have to take this seriously.
Yeah, because he's like, I'm not a leader.
He's very much like, yeah, I don't really want to do any of that stuff.
Which, I don't know. I would have liked to see him like at least attempt it. But like I can totally understand why it's not him. You know. But no, that sort of becomes part of the main plot. But also we get to see more of the Mandalorians, the different sects, some of the, you know, different characters that you might recognize from different series, or like, you know, hey, remember that one guy?
Yeah,
Or like you remember that one group?
Yeah, I feel like there's a lot more emphasis on those characters. Like I know there's one dude, I think his name was Prish.
Yeah,
who was part of like their Mando sect, who gets a lot of character development in this season, and it's just really cool to see him like go from this dude who really didn't like. He's very much like
he's the tank.
Yeah, he's the tank. He's the guy with the big gun.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's very much kind of like set in his ways, but like slowly see him be like a bit more accepting of stuff. You know.
Yeah, it's a really nice character development, and I really like what they did with him towards the end. And like I actually kind of felt something, and I was like, oh man, that sucks, especially like when there's the little subtle like character hints of like how he acts towards other people, and especially when he stands up for certain characters. It's like, yeah, no, that's deserving. That makes sense for this character to do. But yeah, no, it's really more centered around the Mandalorians this season, not as just as a person, but as a group. I would have loved to see more though. But this is what I'm saying about the pacing. It feels like we're kind of like rushing into a lot of stuff that I feel like needed a little more time to breathe, especially with Bo-Katan, because like Bo-Katan is her whole character is centered around like her wanting trying to reclaim Mandalore, and part of it becomes this idea that she kind of needs to like, I don't want to say humbled, but essentially be more accepting of like other of the other groups of Mandalorian, like their ideas, especially like the stuff that she will eventually have to take over, because it's not like she's not gonna take the Dark Saber, because let's face it, she will. And I don't know, I really liked her character in this one. But again, like I feel like there maybe a couple more time left to breathe, and then we should have been fine. What do you think?
No, I definitely understand that point. I think Bo-Katan definitely had an interesting character development, because you know at the beginning she's very kind of just like like screw it, like it's like I'm just hanging out on this planet by myself with like a droid, just because I got nothing left, you know. Like I'm at my wit's end here. I got no Dark Saber, got no man, you know, no fleet, no nothing. I can't really do what I wanted to do. So you know, she has this whole little character arc thing, which is interesting to see. And yeah, the conclusion comes is like we gotta like all come together as one, you know. Like having seen like both sides of this sort of thing, like divided we stand, united we, you know.
Yeah.
Divided we fall, you know, like united we stand, divided we fall.
There's actually a really cool scene where it encapsulates it very well, because it's considering like there really shouldn't be. I mean, there's a good reason for everyone to be here, but this is like a reason why no one wants to like agree.
Yeah.
And yet, you know, they're able to put their differences aside and be like, no, we are this. We can come together. And so, yeah, is there anything else you want to talk about this season overall?
I don't know. I think you know, Mando and Grogu's relationship is still pretty good, you know.
Yeah, it's especially like encapsulated later on as a really like a father-child kind of thing. Like they really like come together.
Yeah.
And it's nice. It's not anything like annoying. I feel like which I thought was gonna be, because like I was very much in the opinion like, okay, his mission's done. Let Grogu go. Let's grow. But no, obviously that didn't happen. And so we have to get Grogu back and Mando back, and then it's nice to see those two relationships. Not gonna lie, I think it works, but it's also one of those things where I'm like, it feels really weird, like we were saying earlier.
Yeah, like it feels a bit disappointing that they didn't decide to keep that that sort of ending of season 2 going. And obviously it feels kind of more of like a corporate thing of like, hey, we can't just get rid of Grogu, that Baby Yoda character. He's making us a lot of money right now.
He is making a lot of money.
With all this merchandise stuff. He's too cute. We got to keep him on the show. So, obviously it's sort of their way of like doing it. And it kind of, like, I won't lie, if that was part of this season of them coming back together, maybe I'd be more accepting of it.
Mm-hmm.
But because that's not the case, it's kind of just a little weird. But yeah, no, their dynamic is still pretty like wholesome and like fun to watch. Especially when Mando's like starts to sort of like get more involved in like getting Grogu to like do more Mandalorian stuff, or like initiation stuff, or like kind of thing. Like he really takes to like that fatherly role, very well.
Yeah, it's like, and you're right. It's a nice wholesome thing to see, and like, I would be wrong to say like I didn't enjoy it. It was good, and I'm glad they brought him back, and at least it wasn't done in a way where, like, you're right, it felt like very like forced, because it could have easily been forced. That's what we're kind of getting at. It's that it's done in a way where it's like really like enjoyable and like really makes sense, especially with considering these two's relationship, because they could have easily just made us forced, right? Not literally forced, but like, oh, we can't get rid of him. He's, like you said, we can't get rid of him. He's the toy. He's the product. But like, no, not only is he that, he's also a character. We're gonna like put these two characters together. There's a relationship. We've established it. We're gonna expand on it. We're gonna make it grow. And they did that, and it did it in a way where it's still compelling, even though we were kind of like, no, they need to be separated, kind of stuff, right? That journey's over. But yeah, we were wrong, obviously.
Well, in terms of like,
Yeah,
I would say that like they managed to make it less weird, I guess, is what I would say to that. Like it's like, okay, the decision to bring them back together like seems to be working out. You know? It'd be more cooler if you did it like if you kept up with that ending, right? But hindsight's 2020. This decision has turned out to be a good one. It's just that we could be living in an alternate reality where like what could have been, right? It's kind of like how some people would argue that wouldn't it be kind of cool if, say, Quicksilver in the MCU managed to live. Like there's a lot of like interesting story beats you probably could have done with him if he was still alive for like any future events during that whole Phase 3, right? But you also have a lot of stuff that's fine without him, that sort of thing. That's sort of where I'm getting at, where it's like we would have had something very interesting, but what we have right now, while it's not as interesting, it's still, I guess, is satisfying.
Yeah. It's one of those things where like, yeah, we would have loved to see this, but there's nothing wrong with what we got. Yeah. I think that's about most of what I can say about this season. I think this season overall is good. It's not like, again, season 1 was kind of like, whoa.
Like I would argue, obviously, like season 1 of Mando is like peak, right? And season 2 is good, but you could argue that a lot of things they add into that show, into the season, kind of like either Like for some people, it's like, oh my god, this is great, awesome, even better. Or some people are just like, god damn it, I just want to like get rid of. I don't want this stuff here. I thought we were gonna be like cool and like be different and stuff, not have all these references and like cameos and stuff or whatever. So this third season just feels like a sort of like, hey, okay, I mean it's fine. Like I mean, if the show ends here, I guess I'm fine with what we've gotten, kind of thing, you know. Like sort of just like a continuing of like, hey, that was pretty good in first season, second season, yeah, that was solid, and then third season just like it's fine.
It's fine.
And for some people that's not great, but for other people, it's like, all right, that's a solid. You know what? That's a solid way. If we're gonna end it here, that's a solid way of ending it.
Yeah, and it's a satisfying way to end it. And I think that's what matters. I think that's what matters. But yeah, no, I think I give it I would probably give it like a good like 7 out of 10 for the season.
Yeah, I would agree to that.
Yeah, it wasn't like spectacular, but it was like it was good.
Like for me, probably season 1 was like a 9. Season 2 is like an 8.5, and then season 3 is a 7.
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but I also think it's probably because like coming after Andor, which was like so different than what we're used to with Star Wars and so unique. It kind of like it kind of makes it feel weird, right?
No, I definitely understand maybe that sort of perspective, like because the Andor is like really good.
Yeah.
So to follow it up with Mando season 3 and being kind of, I wouldn't say lukewarm, but just kind of there, like a solid season of the Mandalorian.
Yeah, and don't get us wrong, they're two different kind of shows.
Yeah, I was gonna say like they are two different kinds of shows. You can't really compare them.
Yeah.
It's like trying to compare Andor to the Star Wars Rebels show. In terms of like, oh, they're both about, the start of the rebellion and, rising up. And it's like, well, one's a Saturday morning cartoon that's supposed to be kind of kiddish. And the other one's a more adult take on that subject. Like, is it a little weird that both exist in the same universe? Yeah, probably.
I think you can say that about a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
I mean, look at comics like Marvel and DC. They got some like really cool, fantastical, fun stuff, and there's also like, oh yeah, there's some weird like dark supernatural shit. Oh god. So like, I think it makes the world just as interesting. But yeah, it like again, the two different shows. But it's like, I think what made Andor work and what made season 1 of like Mandalorian so good is like they were different enough but still feel part of the universe, right? While like I think Mandalorian became more part of the universe, I feel like it kind of being like less interesting. I don't know if that making any sense, but I feel like I'm not the only one who's thinking of that. But yeah, no, I think it's a good season and not a bad season. But I think this is a good place to end it. And if you enjoyed what you heard, be sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at the Geek Centurions, where we'll be more active on Instagram. There's a link tree to the podcast that we're officially part of. Apple Podcast, Google Podcast, Spotify, Pandora, all that you like. And a link to the YouTube for all you guys listening out there and want to put a face to the voice. Be sure to follow us there, like, comment, subscribe. And we do have a Patreon for support in any form of way. And yeah, it's so season 3 of Mandalorian's pretty good. I mean, it was good, not pretty good, but I think it's serviceable. And yeah, it's been me, your boy Eli.
It's me, Joe.
You guys have a good one. Peace.